Hi, Melanie here. Welcome back to my channel. I made this video discussing how and why guilt keeps us trapped in a relationship. Why does guilt keep us stuck? Why does guilt keep us feeling trapped in a dysfunctional relationship? It might seem so absurd and ridiculous to an outsider. You might think, why are you with someone who's causing you misery? Just leave. And yet you feel like you can't. There are reasons for this, which is why I'm making this video. So this applies to all kinds of relationships. It doesn't have to be when dating someone with a personality disorder. Most, if not all of us at some point, can relate to feeling like you don't want to be truly honest about how you feel because you don't want to upset the other person. Many of us can relate to not being fully authentic enough, not fully telling the truth, lying perhaps, because you just don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, or maybe you just can't be bothered with dealing with the hassle that will come with being real about how you think or feel. We've all been there. However, it is something to actually keep yourself in a relationship that's keeping you miserable. If you're still in a relationship in which you're just not happy, you're suffering, and you just really want to get out, like your whole body is screaming to get out, it may seem crazy to outsiders why one would want to stay with someone who is fostering an environment of stress, someone who loves creating drama. Why would you want to be with someone who's causing you all this pain? Yet so many of us still stay in abusive relationships. Whether the abuse is intended or not, many of us still stick around. There are many of us who decide to stay with someone when perhaps there's been some betrayal, some adultery, one partner's cheated on the other, and out of a feeling of guilt and shame, they decide to stick around. Now, whilst this might seem quite humble and the right thing to do to many people, if within yourself you're just not happy with being with that person, if that hasn't been addressed, if you're staying with someone solely because you feel guilty, not actually because you want to be with that person, now it feels like you want to be with that person to make reparations, because when you make reparations, then you can feel better about yourself. However, the people pleasers, the caretakers, people who care a bit too much, they're often the ones who stay in relationships when they feel guilty. So it becomes more important to look after the other person, especially if you've messed up, if you're the one who betrayed. And obviously every relationship's different, but you've got to think, if you're staying with someone out of a sense of duty or obligation to alleviate the suffering that you caused them, don't you think bitterness and resentment is going to build up after a while? If you're not truly happy in the relationship, if you cheated because you just weren't happy, do you think sticking around out of a sense of guilt is going to make things easier in the long run? Or do you think things like disease, depression, do you think these things will pop up? In my experience with witnessing with my clients, and when my clients approach me with the symptoms of stress and suffering, it's ignoring the inner voice, ignoring what they know deep down, but they just don't want to address because they just don't have the time to deal with having to break up with someone, to divorce someone. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time and stress, and it's very depleting when something that you've been repressing and holding back for so long in the relationship, keeping a stiff upper lip. If this has been a long time that you just haven't been happy and you stayed with the partner out of a sense of obligation, then it seems like even more of a stress to actually go ahead and do it. It's like in these years, we've become used to this. We've become familiar with the patterns and the cycles in this relationship. And this becomes like our prison. It's like in the film Shawshank Redemption, when they finally leave the prison, they feel that they've been institutionalized. They don't know they can't handle being out of prison. It's a little bit like that. When you've been a long term in a relationship which you're just not happy in, you're out there because of obligation, then it can seem even harder to break away from it. If you're dating someone with a personality disorder, then this sense of guilt is just magnified. Take, for example, dating someone with BPD, borderline personality disorder. Now, the feelings of guilt of leaving someone is just insane. It is heightened, much more so than dating your typical neurotic person. Now, this is because the borderline absolutely hates being rejected, being abandoned. If it's done on their terms, they have a sense of control over it. But if it's you who wants to break up, if it's you that wants to leave, they're not prepared for it. They will just freak out, and they're going to have extreme emotional flashbacks. They're going to be very emotionally dysregulated. And what they will do is that they will guilt trip you. It's borderlines and narcissists. Oh my God, they love guilt tripping. They love guilt tripping just like teenagers love guilt tripping. As I often say in my videos, people with personality disorders are still psychologically stuck like teenagers. They haven't quite matured in their defense mechanisms. And as such, they will jump to what a child does and will guilt trip you to get what they want. Now, the borderline wants your sympathy. You are a supply source of sympathy and attention and providing comfort. Now, you've just said that you want out, you're not happy. It's going to trigger fear of abandonment, rejection, and they're not going to be happy. No. These people are codependent, and as such, they will do whatever it takes to get you back, providing it's done on their terms. So it's very, very common if you're dating someone who's borderline for them to be the ones that break up with you, and then they'll change their minds and want you back. It's constantly back and forth. You never really get 100% solid break up with someone who's borderline. They will change their minds eventually. So keep that in mind if you're feeling a bit confused in this relationship. They don't want to be on their own. So they will pull at your heartstrings. If you've been in this relationship for a long time, and especially if this is not the first time that you said you wanted out, they know that they have you wrapped around their little finger. So they will pull out all the stops to get you to have a change of heart and stick around. They're saying, comfort me, look after me. Their inner child, their fragile inner child is on display. Please comfort me. It's like putting a child as the poster child of sympathy to get all the sympathy attention. And you have to understand that people who are borderline, they tend to date people who are the caretakers, the people pleasers, the very nice people, the people who don't have strong boundaries. It's a big eye opener if you date someone who's borderline, a big eye opener into how you set your boundaries, because narcissists as well, they want people who don't hold strong boundaries, because they're codependents. They need the other to keep their reality alive. So if you've been dating this someone for a long time and this feeling of guilt is keeping you tied to them, you have to stop and ask yourself, how long has this been going on for? Why is it that I want to leave? What's stopping me from wanting to leave? Is it a sense of obligation? Is it a sense of duty for their personal care? Now, with all this in mind, how do we resolve this? If you feel like you can relate, whether it's as extreme as dating someone as borderline or not, it's just this feeling of guilt that's keeping you in the relationship. You have to ask yourself, are you helping yourself in the long run? Is this actually serving the both of you? For example, if your partner is borderline and you think that sticking around and looking after them will improve their mental health, you have to understand that these are like grown people, but with the mentality of teenagers. They still have the training wheels on in their minds. If they're going to improve, they need to stand up in their maturity and take the initiative and actually be the one to make the change. You need to take their training wheels off. When it comes to dating someone who's borderline, we think that we're helping them, but are we really though? Are we doing it at the cost of our own sanity, of our own energies? We're depleting ourselves. We can't give them the healing and the help that they need. They're constantly reenacting their own trauma from the past. They're desperately wanting to merge with mother. And you two are adults. You're grown-ass adults. You can't be doing this merging. That's what she wants. She needs to reenact this with a trained psychiatrist or counselor or whatever. Not you, not the partner. This is not your responsibility to fix your borderline partner. It's not your responsibility. If you want to leave the borderline relationship, if you're truly not happy, you need to see it as you taking their training wheels off. You may think that you're doing them a disservice by leaving, but actually what you're doing is you're taking the training wheels off, and they're going to have to learn how to cycle on their own. One of you has to be the bigger enough person to do this. You may think that staying with a partner out of a sense of guilt, whether this partner's just your typical neurotic person, whether your partner has a personality disorder, if your partner is just severely traumatized, and you're staying someone solely for the reason of guilt, and inside you just don't feel happy, you need to address this. You need to look at this part. We need to question where the guilt is coming from. Is this a guilt trip that we've been holding for so many years? Guilt is such a powerful emotion that can keep us tied to a behavior. If this behavior is staying in a relationship that doesn't feel right for us after all, we know that we're silently suffering. We know deep down it's not good for us, and yet we stay. We need to question it, because ultimately it's going to lead to a form of distress, of disease, depression. It's going to happen. We can't keep ignoring the symptoms of suffering. It will catch up with us and bite us in the arse. If you're in a relationship with someone who's borderline and you're staying with them out of a sense of guilt that what will happen if I leave? Will their situation get worse? Will they harm themselves? And we stay out of them because we feel like we need to look after them. We feel bad for leaving in case what if. You have to remember that borderlines are codependents as well. You two have both sought out a codependent relationship. She, for example, the borderline, is dependent on you for her emotional regulation, and you are doing the same, looking after someone so that when they're happy, you're happy. Tends to be a pattern with people who identify as codependents. And I don't really like using the label as codependents, because really most of us who are traumatized tend to seek out codependent relationships. It's a term that covers a lot of us. Now, you're keeping the borderline partner dependent on you. If you're sticking around when you're not happy, you're not doing yourself a favor and you're not doing them a favor, because you placating to them and giving them what they need, they're not maturing, they're not growing up, they're not doing the work. And someone who is borderline, who has BPD, they need to be mindful of what's going on and to make a change. And they're not doing that with you. You're being their mother, you're their replacement mother. So they're not going to change. You're enabling their behaviors. You're not encouraging them to step into maturity. And this entails for someone who is borderline to go see a therapist, qualified therapist, not their partners. No. Take it from someone who dated a borderline. Do not take on that responsibility. I managed to escape relatively unscathed because I have prior understanding about BPD, but most people don't have a clue. So I'm telling you now, do not become their therapist, do not become their mother, do not become their father. No, they're not your responsibility. And it's going to get to a point where you have to put your needs first. If you've got any problems, you've got any issues with it, do leave a comment below, because there's lots of people in this issue. Trust me, I'm getting lots of emails and messages from other men who are in this situation. So it'll be awesome. If you want to share how things are, please leave a comment below. And as always, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all another time. Bye for now.